Um, Today's subject is how to be basically planning a survey trip. Now, you're probably like, a survey trip is like the land surveyors, like what's going on? And so I kind of want to give you a little bit of background about why we're doing this. So we have gotten a lot of people who have, expressed interest in coming to Japan, and we kind of have some people who are trying to figure out, like, am I supposed to be in Japan, or what does that look like? And they're just trying to figure out what to do. And um, a lot of times people want to at least visit and try to feel out what those next steps might be. And which is great. That's awesome. But a lot of times I think people don't really have the clarity that they need to make the most of their trip. And literally, you're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars just to get over here, right? Like, you might be able to get a cheap plane ticket and come over here for like $1,000, but you still got in-country travel, food, all the time, energy that you're going to spend to come over here. And what a survey trip is basically, it has a couple reasons, a couple purposes. One is to figure out, like, should I be doing this? Some people, they feel like, man, God is directing me to Japan. I feel like maybe this is a thing that I'm supposed to be a part of. Is it really? Like, trying to get some clarity. For other people, they're like, okay, I think I'm sure that this is what I need to be doing, but man, what does that look like? So we're going to be talking through some of that today. And I'm also going to be providing some links to some resources that are on our website. We're going to be giving you a list of questions you can be asking missionaries. There's like 50 of them. That's for more like logistical details. We're also going to give you a link to a resource on our website about how to contact missionaries when you're trying to actually set up these meetings. Because a lot of time gets wasted in needless back and forth. So I'll give those to you here later. But before we do all that, I want to jump into this real quick and show you this picture. Boom, right there. So what you are looking at is what you are currently looking at is a kind of a graph that we're trying to use to kind of give you a little bit of understanding of probably where you are right now, where you've come from, where you are, and where you're going. So you see the little "you are here" little pin right there. Um, so a lot of times what we find is people, they start hearing about Japan, they start understanding that, man, Japan needs the gospel. People need to get saved. There's not churches, all this stuff. And people are like, okay, so like, should I be doing this? What does that look like? All of that. And so the reason why we put this together is so you could have a better idea of saying, okay, where am I at? Am I just like initially interested and trying to figure out just general information? Or am I trying to actually get answers to solid questions? Or have I made a decision and I'm just looking for concrete ways to take the next actionable step? The reason why you want to ask these questions is because if you don't know why you are kind of engaging, exploring, it's going to make it very muddy for the people who are trying to help you. You might start reaching out, you might start sending us a DM, you might send us an email, be like, hey, I want to be a missionary in Japan. Let's connect. And that is like the worst way to connect because we have no idea, no context, nothing like where are you at in this journey. So if you understand where you are in this process, then we can kind of help you know where to go from here. Like, you wouldn't give a high school senior the same advice as you would a high school freshman. Like, the timing is off. So are you in a inquiry phase, just like kind of exploring, kind of just asking around? Are you exploring possibilities? Like, here's what I can do, here's what I am good at, and where can I plug that in? Or um, are you in the pre-decision making phase? Like, I'm trying to decide if I should actually even be in Japan in the first place. Um, Most of you watching this are probably in this middle zone, and it's helpful to know that these phases kind of they overlap. They're not necessarily in one particular order. Usually the top one, curiosity, is 1, interest 2, inquiry 3, exploration 4, decision 5. But like 2, 3, 4, 5, it kind of overlap. So just kind of keep that in mind for me as we're going through this. So as you're going through curiosity and all this stuff, one of the things that I want to kind of point out in this process is that when you're in exploration and decision, a lot of people kind of hit this roadblock between like, okay, should I be in Japan? Should I be serving in Japan? And then they're like, what does that look like? And all of that at the same time. And what I would really like to encourage you to do in this process is to focus on one thing at a time. And that might mean you need to make a decision about Japan. This is where I'm going to go, or at least missions in general. I'm going into this, and then maybe get into some specifics, because a lot of times what we see is it's kind of muddied. People are like, I think I want to be a missionary. I think God's calling me to be a missionary in Japan, and all the details. But am I even supposed to be a missionary in Japan in the first place? So, kind of work through that. And as you're exploring this possibility, I would really like to encourage you to know that you don't need all the answers to make a decision. Go back to Abraham's life, Abraham's story in the Old Testament, and God's like, hey, get up, go to the place that I'm going to show you. It'll be great. And I'm going to promise you this land. So he gets up and he moves, and he doesn't know every single step along the way. And really, in the work of missions and what we're doing, it's a faith step, right? So if God gives us the entire roadmap, then we don't need any faith, right? Like, oh, this is how it's going to work out. This is what we're going to do. The end. But that's not how God works. So just know that it's a step of faith. That being said, you still want to get some clarity, and I understand that. So, the other thing I want to point out on this graph really quickly is that, it says interest, inquiry, exploration, decision, and then all of that leads to preparation. So you're going to have to do some prep work before you actually arrive. And so you'll want to keep that in mind. And then you think, okay, I'm prepared. I launch in, and then what's left is actually incubation right here. I'm not sure if you see that or not. Incubation. Oh, OBS is glitching. But what that is talking about is that's talking about our internship program. So once you actually go through this process, this entire decision-making process, and you're like, okay, I'm in, and then you prepare and you land, then you're actually thrown into an incubator, and you're actually incubating for 2 years. We let you simmer for a couple years before you get thrown into the deep end. And that is because, it's going to take time to learn the language. It's going to take time to learn culture and what ministry looks like in Japan, all these things. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. All right. So let's first talk about what you need to expect on your survey trip. So you go to Japan. What should you be expecting? What should you be kind of looking forward to? One thing is you likely won't speak the language, right? Most people won't be able to just show up and just start having normal conversations with people. You don't speak the language, so you can't jump into ministry right away. So if you're trying to figure out like if Japan is the place for you, chances are you're not just going to show up at a church and just start serving right away. Like most of your churches won't let a first-time visitor just show up and plug in. Like that's not how things typically work. I was like, okay, who are you? What's going on? And so if you write and you're saying, hey, I'm interested in Japan, can I come by your church and help out with anything? It's like, well, we've never met you before, and we'd like to kind of get to know you first and make sure everything's cool. So keep that in mind. They don't have a plug and play role for visitors. Like you can come by, so keep that in mind. And again, is your goal to figure out if you should be in Japan or if you're trying to figure out what your life in Japan should look like. Now, that's going to make you feel pretty useless. And if your goal is to figure out if you're supposed to be in Japan, though, your main mission on this trip should not be, man, I'm going to try to just serve and plug in. We appreciate that, but showing up is a great form of support. But Honestly, observing and asking a lot of questions is going to be the way to go. You want to make sure that you're like soaking it in, like, okay, take notes. How are they doing stuff? Who's doing this? How long have they been here? What's the structure like? Can our family make it here? All those questions are in that handout we'll give you later. But your goal is not to be running a ministry for a week. Your goal is to figure out those next steps, whether it's yes or no on Japan or whatever mission field you are in, or okay, yeah, I've already said yes. What does that look like? And figuring out those details. So don't think you have to show up and serve. Um, we don't really expect you to. The other thing is that, a lot of times we get people and they're like, hey, we'd like to see you. And you need to, again, this goes back to clarifying the purpose of your trip. If you don't have a clear goal of, man, I'm either trying to make a decision or I'm trying to get clarity on what those details look like. If you don't have that, then what's going to happen is when you contact missionaries and try to get in touch with churches and ministries, like, okay, what do you want from us? And this is the question that we're going to have from the field. Okay, I get that you're excited about missions. I get that you're really curious, but what are you looking for? And most of the time, people aren't just going to be able to just give you this grand tour. We can't run a tourist agency for every person that sends us an email. So it might be just over coffee. It might just be a quick dinner, depending on what your needs are. So don't expect people to just drop everything and say, "Oh, great missionary candidate, great, come on in. We'd love for you to just stop by and spend 3 days with you." Depending on the schedules, depending on what their situation is, they might not even be in a place that they can handle you. So just be sensitive to that and realize that you might be moving around a lot on your own, especially if you're not in an organized trip like our recon tours that we do. All right. Now, when you're contacting people, make specific requests and don't just say, "Hey, I'd love to connect." Be like, you want to ask, "Hey, could I attend your service?" Which obviously you're welcome to attend church. Or is there a language school that you recommend that I could go to? Or could I just tag along on your outreach, whatever that looks like? Could you provide some of those insights? I'd love to learn about that. Now, one of the things as you're contacting these people, one of the things that you don't want to do is just say, "Hi, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you're doing." Most of the time, if you're contacting a missionary, now this is not a church, but missionaries and churches with missionaries, most of the time we have updates that we send to our supporters and to people who are praying for us. So instead of saying, "Hey, I like more information. Could you tell me about your ministry?" The first question you might want to ask is saying, "I'm curious about your ministry. Could you send me your last several updates that you've sent out so I can get up to speed on what you're doing and get to know you guys a little bit better?" That way, like we write like letters. Like most people write like full page letters like every month or few months. Like, "Hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we're doing." So when you say, "Could you tell me about what you're doing and what's going on?" You're basically asking them to rewrite something that's already available. So ask for those first, read those, kind of get to know them a little bit, understand their situation, and then go forward and asking, "Could I tag along with this or that?" Those are some details. Now, there's some details about you that people on the field want to know before we kind of move forward with setting up anything or providing some guidance. These will be in the handout that we send to you, but if you are curious, one, we want to know how you got saved. Like, are you a Christian in the first place, or do you just want to go to Japan? Um, what's your church background? Like, where do you go? Is there a denominational affiliation? How long have you been going there? This helps us understand like where you're coming from, because if we don't know where you're coming from, what your background is, what you've walked through, I mean, you could be non-denom, you could be Baptist, you could be charismatic, whatever. We want to know that so we know who we're talking to. So there's that. Also, your current church, like where it is, not just like FBC, but like, is that Faith Baptist, First Baptist, Freedom Baptist? What does that mean? Why Japan? What's leading you to Japan? What's the circumstances leading this? Is this just like, "Oh, I saw an Instagram reel and thought Japan was cool, so Japan"? Or is it, "God's been working in my heart, somebody came by and spoke at a church or chapel, or I had a friend. God's been bringing Japanese people in my life, and I feel like this is something that God's directed me towards. We want to know that. How are you involved in ministry? Like, are you serving right now? And then, if you have any specific questions, and what stage you're at. Now, on this survey trip, here are some practical things that you can do to make the most of your time. Because otherwise, what happens is you're like, okay, we're going to go, we're going to talk to some people, and then maybe you'll come for like 7 days, 10 days. You'll book your arrangements, and then you show up and you're like, okay, I'm trying to figure out if I'm supposed to be a missionary here, or I'm trying to figure out next steps. What do I do? So, one thing you can do is obviously go to church, right? Find a church or several churches that you could kind of visit, just kind of see differences. We encourage that. Maybe join an outreach event if there's something going on. Say, could I just attend and observe? Not necessarily help, but observe and see what's going on. And then look at normal life stuff. So, shopping, like groceries, living arrangements, language school, and this is all stuff we do on Recon, by the way. But I'm just giving you advice if you're doing this alone. Um, Language school, kids school, what would that look like? Parks, if you've got kids. Also, kind of adjust your perspective. For example, if you're single, what you're looking for is probably going to just be focused on right now. But kind of think ahead. Like, if I were to get married, I probably don't want to live in a one bedroom apartment for a single person. Like, what kind of family arrangements are there for families with kids and parks and stuff like that? Kind of think ahead. Um, get to know some of the basics like public transit. What about vehicles? Can I drive here? How scary is that? Um, Malls, clinics, kind of get a rough idea. And some of this would be just through asking questions of people, like, what is this like? What's the medical system like? If you have a specific medical condition, like, do you know anybody I could talk to about these things? Um, Even trying to cook a meal, if you're not just staying in a hotel, if you have, say, like an Airbnb, you could try going to the grocery store, seeing what you can find, and cooking something. Like, okay, that's not what I thought. Or try using the gas burner and be like, oh, okay, that's not what I thought. But then you get a little bit of experience doing that. Um, you want to ask key questions from the people that you actually meet with instead of just like, I'm here, teach me. Living logistics, expenses. It varies from city to city. Get that education, medical stuff, ministry involvement and outlook. Like, where have you come from? Where are you guys going? Missionary life and support systems. Like, what is your organization like? What kind of lifelines are there for you to help you go forward? Tell us about the history of your city, your area, because this is something you'll want to start taking notes on. And honestly, take a journal, even just if it's like a notebook, and just kind of journal your thoughts along the way, just so you kind of note down your impressions. Um, what are the city dynamics? What makes this area unique? And also like outreach stuff. Like, what have you guys been trying? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What have you wish somebody told you sooner? Um, those things. Make note of those and prayerfully consider those. Now, some common mistakes that people make on these trips is they kind of just go it alone. And I really would encourage you not to do that, but to talk to people in your church, especially your leadership. They're there to help you and guide you and nurture you through this process. So ask them for advice. They might know people, or they might be able to actually help you and pray with you about these things. Saying, "Hi, I feel like I'm God is working my heart to go to Japan. Um, what would be some good steps?" Or, "I've contacted these people. What do you think? How do you recommend this?" Um, the other thing would be, don't contact people too late. You want to give enough buffer. So don't say, "Hey, I'm coming to Japan next week. Can I come by and do this?" Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, that might not work out. So give like probably at least a month notice, if not more, before you show up. Don't expect the missionaries to serve as a tour guide. It might be more like, "Hey, on my lunch break, I could come meet you," or you can just tag along and we can talk in the car. Kind of be creative with how you are trying to interact with missionaries, especially if you're contacting them in between, like going to the furniture store and the appliance store and kind of making notes of things. Also, don't expect long replies to your emails. So you might have a bunch of questions. go ahead and send those over, whatever questions you have, but don't expect missionaries to be like, oh, here's like a 10-page essay like that ChatGPT might have spit out, because I just have all the time in the world. Because most people are working a job. Okay, so I just keep that in mind. Um, Also, don't assume everyone's experience in Japan is the same. Uh, Ask 10 missionaries, they're going to give you 10 different stories. So, depending on which organization they're with, which region they're working in, you'll start to hear different stories. And some people will say, you can never do this. And other people will say, you can always do this. And it just depends. So, keep that in mind. Um, and then the other thing is you just kind of come home and you just keep it to yourself. So, you go to Japan, you go around, you travel, and you're like, this is great. Okay, I think, I'm not sure, but this is great. And then you just kind of come home and you're like, oh, whew, and then you just jump right back into work. Take some time to process that. Go over that with your pastor. Talk with somebody about that, and kind of debrief from your trip. And that's one more thing is don't cram too much in. What I would recommend is if you're doing a survey trip or any kind of trip to kind of feel out things in Japan, schedule 2, maybe 3 things a day. And you don't want to err on the side of just going and having fun, because that's not your point, right? You're trying to figure out, should I be in Japan, should I be serving here? So um, try to schedule maybe somebody in the morning, somebody in the afternoon or evening, maybe a church activity, or maybe doing something fun, something to learn culture. Watch people know, hey, this time of day people are doing this or that. Or even as you're out and about, kind of jot down observations, so when you're with people, hey, the other day I saw this happening, what is that? Kind of get some ideas for some questions to ask. But if you try to cram too much in, you'll end up exhausted. And I get it, right? Like, you're trying to get your money's worth. You just spent like two, three, $4,000 on this trip, and you're like, I gotta get my money's worth. But if you end up burnt out and exhausted, you're not going to have the clarity of mind to kind of take everything in. Also, factor in jet lag. If you're coming from the East Coast, we're like half a day off, so you're going to get sleepy, probably around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our time, because that's right after midnight, U.S. time. And what's going to happen is your first few days, there's like adrenaline running, and you're like, yeah, I got this. And this happens almost to everybody that comes, but those first few days, that adrenaline just keeps pushing you. You're like, yeah, I'm in Japan. And so you don't feel it. Around day 3, day 4, people tend to start crashing a little bit. And your thinking will be a little foggy because your just time zones are off. So just kind of keep that in mind. Build in some rest schedules, because you're probably going to be doing a lot more walking than you're used to, and your internal clock is going to be way off. So keep those things in mind. Don't make those mistakes. Final step, though, final word. I know this is a big step. Taking a survey trip is a big step, but it's not the final step. Maybe you might say, I need to take this back and pray about it some more. Or you might say, you know what? I need to actually make a decision and commit to this, and then figure out where to go from here. We want to help you through that process. We can't promise to meet with everybody. Maybe we just need to jump on a Zoom call. Whatever the case, we would love to at least be part of that journey and help you out. I'm sure you probably know this by now, but if not, we're on a mission to start 16 churches in our city by 2030. And we are praying for people to come and be part of that work. And maybe God has a part for you to play in his plan for our city here. And so if you're praying about it, then man, we would love to at least be part of that journey. So send us a DM. We'll send you those resources. If you just send us a DM, we'll send you those links. I'll drop them into the YouTube section as well in the comments. But man, we are so excited. If you have any questions, send us a follow-up or drop it in the comments, and we will take care of those as they come through. But thank you so much for joining us today on this. I hope that this helps you as you kind of plan to try to get some more clarity, clarify the purpose for your trip, and communicate that so you can be crystal clear about what your next steps need to be. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And until next time, peace.